This is a Know Your Rights presentation about immigrant-related retaliation in the resilience workplace. Disclaimer: the information included in this presentation does not and is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information content and materials available in this presentation are for general informational purposes only. Today, we will cover what resilience work is, when an employer may seek retaliation against an employee, what retaliation is, what immigrant-related retaliation is, and how to protect yourself from immigrant-related retaliation in the workplace. Resilience workers rebuild communities after natural disasters strike. They enter dangerous conditions and work long hours, often after traveling away from family and living in shared rooms with other workers. Whether you are a U.S. citizen, a legal permanent resident, or an undocumented resident, the following are a few of the rights you are entitled to as a worker in the United States. The right to be paid for your labor, the right against discrimination based on national origin, race, sexual orientation, religion, and gender under Title VII of the Civil Rights of 1964, the right against other kinds of harassment once hired, the right to a safe workplace environment and to any materials necessary for your health and safety, and the right to work stoppage if any worker's rights are not met. In this slide, we see how a retaliatory action takes place. All of the elements will be broken down in the following slides. Here, the employer did not meet the employee's right to a safe workplace because the appropriate gloves were not provided by the employer. The worker attempted to improve the worksite condition by asking a supervisor for gloves that were appropriate for the mold in the workplace. This was an informal complaint, as we will see in the next slide. There is nothing wrong with the worker asking for gloves, but the employer, perhaps not wanting to provide the gloves because they're too expensive, or just not liking it when employees ask for better work conditions, gets angry. After the employee asks for the gloves, the supervisor changes the employee's work hours from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now we will see how workers stand up to bad workplace conditions. Many workers, when faced with unlawful activity at work, conduct an investigation on their own. They might ask other coworkers if they are experiencing the same thing. They might ask a person with whom they are friendly in the construction office about certain practices. They might do some internet research to see if there have been previous complaints or lawsuits involving a particular employer. Many workers also make complaints. Complaints can be formal. You can file a complaint with the Human Resources Department or with a government agency. Complaints can also be informal, such as telling a boss that you have not been paid, asking a supervisor for gloves and masks appropriate for the mold you are working around, stopping work until safety equipment is provided, or asking the general contractor who provides all the instructions on the site for payment when the subcontractor is not paying you. Some employers, when they hear about such investigations or complaints, don't like it. They want to keep the wages for themselves, they don't want to pay for safety equipment, or they don't want the government bothering them. So some employers retaliate. Retaliation is a form of revenge. In the employment setting, it is the employer harming or acting against an employee in response to a complaint. Retaliation. Okay. Let's say that you, a woman, find out that you are not getting paid the same amount as another employee who was a man for the same demolition work after a hurricane. You ask a few other employees and find out that all women aren't getting the same payment for doing the same work that the men do. You have uncovered a form of discrimination in the workplace. When you say something to your employer, he threatens to fire you and says he will call immigration. That is a clear form of retaliation. Here are some subtle ways employers retaliate against employees after employees make a complaint in the workplace. Reprimand you, transfer you to a less desirable position, scrutinize work or attendance more closely than that of other employees, scrutinize work or attendance more closely than before you made the complaint, file a fabricated claim of criminal action, claim something was stolen from the job site and call the police when you did not steal anything, give a performance evaluation that is lower than it should be, remove supervisory responsibilities, spread false rumors about you, treat a family member negatively, for example, cancel a contract with the person's spouse, make your work more difficult, for example, changing your work schedule to very early or very late hours, make false reports to government authorities or in the media, threaten reassignment. Some employers use the fact that an employee is undocumented to retaliate against an employee. This is called immigrant-related retaliation. These forms of retaliation are less obvious, and the employer knows it is an extra danger to undocumented workers because an undocumented worker would not only face losing a job, but also potentially being put on ICE's radar and be sent to a detention center and deported. Employers know that this is the biggest fear of an undocumented worker and use this fear to keep workers from complaining in the workplace. Here are some forms of immigrant-related retaliation. Ask about immigration status. Threaten to make reports to authorities, such as calling the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, La Migra, or contacting the police, or do any of the following. Say, go back to your home country, ask if you're from the United States, ask to see your green card, tell you that they have more rights because they are from the United States, and tell you that nobody will believe you or listen to you because you are undocumented. Actually make reports to ICE or Border Patrol. Note that ICE generally does not respond to reports from the public about undocumented immigrants. ICE has priorities that it focuses on, which currently include people with criminal records. Threaten to call the police, especially if the job site is in a 287G community, which is a county or parish with an agreement to hold immigrants in jail for up to 48 hours for ICE pickup. Actually make reports to the police. Note that many police forces around the U.S. have decided not to cooperate with ICE. These are called sanctuary cities. Also, generally, the police and ICE only cooperate when someone is officially arrested. Require re-verification or initial verification of work status for the first time, also known as an I-9 audit. Say, I need to see your papers again. Say, I didn't care about your papers when you started working here, but now that you've complained, I need to see your papers. Let's look back at the list of subtle retaliation. Now, if your employer makes any kind of comment about your immigration status while doing these things to you, you might have a claim for illegal immigration-related retaliation. For example, if you ask for safety equipment and you and your crew don't work one afternoon until it is provided, and then your boss suddenly changes the hours of you and your crew from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. to 6 p.m. to 1 a.m., it says something like, damn illegals think they can tell me how to run my business. That is retaliation plus an immigration-related retaliation, which equals an immigration-related retaliation. It is important to note here that all retaliation is illegal. Whether related to immigration status or not, all retaliation is illegal. Let's look at some examples that have happened to other resilience workers. A group of workers cleaning up after Hurricane Irma didn't get paid, and they complained about not getting their wages from the labor recruiter subcontractor, Daniel Paz. The workers complained by calling, texting, and visiting the office of the prime contractor. Paz threatened Reynaldo Quintero Sr., saying he would send immigration officials to his home and call immigration authorities if they did not leave him alone. On one occasion, Daniel Paz said, "Yo soy americano, I am American." Similarly, Daniel Paz told another plaintiff via text message, "No le debo nada a usted. Deje de molestar o inmigración se irá a su casa. I owe you nothing, okay, so stop bothering me or immigration will come to your house." Resilience Force and several of these workers sued, and the prime contractor paid them $50,000 in wages and damages, and a judge said the labor recruiter who sent the nasty texts had to pay $250,000. Jose Arnulfo Arias had been working at a dairy farm in California, Angelo Dairy, for many years when he got an offer to work at another dairy farm in 1997. Angelo Dairy told him that they would tell immigration authorities that the other farm was hiring undocumented workers if he left to work for the dairy farm. So Arias stayed at Angelo Dairy for another 10 years. In 2006, he filed a lawsuit for unpaid overtime pay and meal breaks against Angelo Dairy, and the farm's attorney, Anthony Raimondo, called his friend at ICE to ask about Arias' immigration status. Raimondo informed ICE that Arias would be present at a deposition, and that if ICE decided to apprehend Arias there, he would work with ICE to make the necessary arrangements. Fortunately, ICE did not act on this information and did not go to the deposition. When Arias found out that Raimondo had called ICE, he filed another lawsuit. this time suing the attorney, Raimundo, under federal labor laws for unlawful retaliation because he threatened to call ICE when Arias claimed lack of paid wages. At the end of the lawsuit, the dairy farm and the attorney paid Arias a large amount of money because of their illegal immigration-related retaliation. Arias faced no further consequences with ICE. So we saw that if you make a complaint, you might get retaliated against. But it's important to speak up in the workplace when laws are being violated. What can you do to protect yourself if you are making a complaint? What can you do to make your complaint as strong as it can be? And what can you do to protect yourself against illegal immigration-related retaliation? Complain with others. You can complain in writing, sending a text or email, and if you send or deliver a letter, take a picture of the letter before you do. Document what the employer is doing. Take videos, take screenshots, take pictures, but be careful if recording an employer secretly. In some states, including Florida, that can be illegal. Ask for payment by direct deposit or other electronic means so you don't have to reveal your home address. You might wait until the job is over to make a complaint. Meet often with coworkers off of the site to find out if other workers are going through the same situations. Start a group text chat or WhatsApp group of coworkers, and don't include supervisors or chiefs. Keep a journal of changes in the workplace, whether it is new supervisors, more attention paid to groups of employees, negative attention, or preference in assignments and hours. The information you collect can help when you contact an attorney who can file a case with a court, with the Department of Labor, or with the National Labor Relations Board. Additionally, it can help as new programs arise that help immigrants who report wrongdoing in the workplace. In July of 2022, the Department of Labor released guidelines to help in cases of immigrant workers facing retaliation in response to complaints in the workplace. The Department of Labor, on a case-by-case basis, will provide a letter of support for the Department of Homeland Security to request prosecutorial discretion for the immigrant worker who faces retaliation at the hands of their employers. The employee must request prosecutorial discretion from the Department of Homeland Security using the Department of Labor support letter. The letter alone does not give you any legal status, and it does not guarantee that the prosecutor will grant you any benefit. To be considered for this type of support from the Department of Labor, it is important to have sufficient evidence to prove the complaint and wrongdoing, as well as the retaliative action taken by the employer related to the labor dispute. Furthermore, the Department of Labor asks to see a description of fear among other workers in the worksite that would keep other workers from reporting violations related to labor or otherwise cooperating with the Department of Labor. To recap, retaliation is when an employer takes action against a worker who makes a complaint about legal violations in the workplace. Immigration-related retaliation is when the employer's action taken against the employee is about their status as an immigrant. All workers have a right to be protected from all types of retaliation in the workplace. Collecting evidence of the wrongdoing and of any action employers take against employees is the best way to build a case against employers. Finally, recently there have been new policies that further protect immigrants in the workplace by providing letters of support for prosecutorial discretion. To be considered for this type of assistance, it is important to have all of the evidence necessary to show that there was a dispute in the workplace, that the employer retaliated against you using your immigrant status in response to your complaint, and that other workers are afraid to come forward because of the retaliation. Do you think that you have experienced immigration-related retaliation? Contact Resilience Force at info@resilienceforce.org or by calling 504-233-8371. Thank you.